Number 10. Kane Parker. Kane was one of the first evil clones ever made of Spider-Man, and really, he wasn't evil of his own choosing. He was kind of just a bad dude because he was so defective and was quickly degenerating. His degeneration made Kane somewhat insane, and his powers also didn't help. His own version of Spider-Sense was more precognitive, giving him visions of the future. The problem? With each vision he viewed, he would become more and more unhinged. Kane Parker would start out as being more of a sinister figure, but as time went on, he'd really become more of a moody anti-hero in the comics. In some cases, he was also only originally an antagonist because his motives were misunderstood by Peter. Number 9. The Jackal. At one point, another clone who was previously considered to be one of the best clones with the most potential for good also turned to the dark side. Yes, this clone was none other than Ben Reilly. Having recalled all of his deaths from when Miles was experimenting on Ben in an attempt to perfect the cloning process, Ben became somewhat unhinged. He ended up defeating and killing Miles Warren only to bring him back as a clone and convince Miles to work for him. This would result in Ben adopting the mantle of the Jackal for himself and building a clone army of Spider-Man's previously dead friends, allies, and even villains, as well as building the New U Technologies Corporation. In exchange for the clones' cooperation, Ben provided them with pills that would help to stave off the degeneration while he worked to perfect the cloning process himself, and a frequency technology that would substitute the pill for, well, likely only a chosen few, because Ben probably wanted to control the other clones. He was like, I'm good, but also I'm kind of controlling you. Well, he meant well. When Peter was approached to join the Jackal, who was revealed to him to be Ben, he simply refused, believing that the Jackal was a perfect example of having all the power, but none of the responsibility. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want another list like it where we talk about even more evil Spider-Men, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. There are surprisingly a lot of evil Spider-Men out there. Number 8. Ghost Spider. While redeemed in the end, initially when we met Peter Parker, who was to become Ghost Spider, we would learn of just how evil he was. Ghost Spider is the Peter Parker from Reality Earth 11618, where he was previously known as simply the Amazing Spider. Not to be confused with Ghost Spider, who is Gwen Stacy from an alternate reality. I think that's Earth 65. So now there's kind of two Ghost Spiders, but anyways. This version of Ghost Spider makes an appearance in the 2011 ASM Annual number 38. Here we learn what happens when Uncle Ben does not die, but instead gets to live out his life alongside his nephew. He ends up teaching Peter that with great power comes a great responsibility to keep said power. As a result, he ends up training Peter, who eventually not only becomes a successful hero, but also a successful businessman and a successful scientist. Uncle Ben and Peter decide to use their scientific knowledge to lure other Spider-Men from the multiverse to their reality, and then drain them of their power to be used to booster or bolster the Amazing Spider's own abilities and powers, making him even more powerful with each transfer. However, the Spider-Man of Earth 616, when caught in this trap, was able to convince the Amazing Spider that what he was doing was pretty wrong. In the end, he sacrificed his own powers and life to help the Spider-Man of 616 escape. However, he didn't actually die, but ended up in a coma, with his soul trapped in hell. Eventually, he would awaken and return as Ghost Spider. Redemption, baby. Number 7. Zombie Peter. This alternate version of Peter Parker hails from Earth 2149, sometimes referred to as Earth Z or the Marvel Zombieverse. In this reality, Peter did his best to hold out and avoid becoming infected, but ultimately did succumb to that after being bitten by Steve Rogers, known as Colonel America in this reality. After being bitten, Spider-Man began to transform into a zombie. Before the change overtook him, he hoped to get Aunt May and Mary Jane somewhere safe and returned home, only to be overcome by the infection. As a result, he ended up eating both of his loved ones, unable to resist the hunger he felt deep inside himself. Spider-Man in this reality goes on to become one of the zombie Galacti, taking on the power cosmic after eating Galactus. However, in the end, he's also one of the few surviving zombies who aims to prevent the spread of the zombie plague to other universes, eventually becoming a hero once more. As so many evil Spider-Men do, they always come around in the end, even if they're a zombie. Number 6. Poison. Poison is the alternate version of Peter Parker who comes from the What If version of the other story. In this version of the story, Peter abandons the spider within himself. This leaves Peter detached and vulnerable. Sensing this, the Venom symbiote leaves its then host, Matt Gargan, in pursuit of Peter Parker, who is still within his cocoon. The symbiote forcibly bonds with Peter and emerges from the cocoon as a new entity that goes by the name of Poison. Instinctively returning turning to Mary Jane, it then attempts to convince her to join its side. But terrified of what both the symbiote and what Peter have become, she rejects them. Ultimately, they decide to dig up the body of Gwen Stacy and make her their new partner in crime. Yikes. Poison is all around just bad news. Very, very evil. Very spooky. Not that all spooky things need to be evil, just to be clear. Number 5. Spider Carnage. Spider Carnage hails from the 90s animated Spider-Man series. Here, Spider Carnage hailed from an alternate reality where after being cloned and losing both his Aunt May and his Uncle Ben, he began to question whether or not he was the real Peter Parker or the clone himself. As this version of Peter was filled with rage, Carnage entered his world via a portal and bonded with this alternate version of Peter Parker, who then became Spider Carnage. Spider Carnage threatened the existence of the entire multiverse, and it took a team of heroic Spider-Men coming together to stop him. Eventually, he was convinced by his still living alternate version of Uncle Ben that what he was doing was wrong, but was unable to remove the Carnage symbiote from him at that point, so he ultimately sacrificed himself to save the world from the evil of Carnage, and kind of the evil of himself, because he was so filled with rage and hate. Number 4. Patient Zero. This version of Peter hails from the reality belonging to the series Marvel Universe vs. the Punisher, the reality of 11080, where Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, was the last known survivor who was forced to take on, you guessed it, the entire Marvel Universe, after the world was ravaged by a deadly and horrifying plague. Here, Peter ends up becoming Patient Zero after a virus, which is the plague, is accidentally released that turns people into violent cannibals. Peter himself devours Rhino during a hockey match and is taken to be researched by the Fantastic Four. However, he does not stay quarantined as the virus spreads to Ben Grimm of the FF, who then releases him. He goes on to become the leader of one of the cannibalistic tribes involved in a turf war. The Punisher ends up killing him after helping to rescue a pregnant Mary Jane in exchange for information that Patient Zero has. I don't think this version of Spider-Man is ever really fully redeemed. He does try to save Mary Jane though, so that's something. Number 3. Patton Parnell. Patton Parnell has to be one of the most evil incarnations of Spider-Man around. He's evil to the core. He literally becomes a Spider-Man, turning into a spider-like human hybrid after he is bit by a radioactive spider. Patton was also kind of always a creepy kid, likely as a result of mistreatment that he suffered at the mercy of his Uncle Ted. He had a crush on his next door neighbor, Sarah Jane, and enjoyed disturbing scientific pursuits such as burning ants with a magnifying glass. What fun. When he transformed into Spider-Man, he became more confident in himself, but also acquired a taste for live animal and human flesh. He also was capable of laying eggs, as Uncle Ted would horrifyingly and personally find out after young Patton took revenge on him. That's all I'll say about that, but we might be showing you a scary panel of that right now. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the editor's doing in this video, but cue scary panel of Ted having spiders coming out of him. Ugh. Number 2. The Spider. This is a version of Peter Parker who also merged with the Carnage symbiote, and was possibly driven criminally insane by it. Or was criminally insane to begin with in this reality perhaps. This version of Peter hails from the reality of Earth 15. Not much is known about his home reality, mainly what we know of it involved Peter's own history. This alternate version of the character bonded with the alien symbiote that is often referred to as Carnage on Earth 616. He became an infamous mass murderer who apparently enjoys hurting people. He made his first appearance in the Exiles in issue number 12, where he showed up with a team of other heroes who were drafted into a multiversal version of Weapon X. I mean, they are heroes there, but they also kinda shady, you know? I mean, not all of them are, but definitely Spider is. Number 1. Wolf Spider. Wolf Spider comes from the animated show Ultimate Spider-Man. He was an alternate version of Peter Parker who hailed from the reality of Earth 16827 and was bad to the bone. Unlike many other alternate versions of Spider-Man, for some reason Wolf Spider became a villain instead of a hero when his spider-like powers manifested. He was a merciless killer, fighting to oppose anyone who fought on the side of good, was a hero, or believed in the ideal of responsibility. He even ended up killing his own reality's version of Miles Morales. And if that doesn't make you evil, I don't know what is, because Miles Morales is the best, and he's such a sweetheart. How dare you do that, Wolf Spider? I can't abide.
And at number 10, Riddler. Believe it or not, Batman has actually admitted that the Riddler is more intelligent than he is. Obviously, he is incredibly insane, but the Riddler has even realized this himself, which only expanded his intelligence. In terms of street-level villains, few can stand up to the intelligence of Riddler. Just like Batman himself, Riddler always has backup plans for his backup plans. He plays for most outcomes, but he usually sets traps and plans that are so well thought out that he doesn't always need his backup plans. And then, obviously, there's all the wordplay that he includes in his riddles that has even the most astute of readers rubbing their chins just trying to figure it out, you know? Number 9. Vandal Savage. When you think of intelligence, you don't often think of cavemen. But there is one caveman who can proudly make this list. Vandal Savage was alive 50,000 years ago as chief of a tribe of other cavemen. But when he came into contact with a strange meteorite, it exploded and bathed him in this strange alien radiation that gave him immunity to aging, disease, and fatigue, meaning he's effectively immortal. The meteorite also increased his intelligence to superhuman levels, which combined with 50,000 years of learning, experiencing, and living alongside every single technological innovation in the history of man, Vandal Savage possesses skills in almost all areas, even basically becoming immune to pain. But he specifically focuses on the tactical skills that would help him become a world conqueror. He never became. Number 8. Eobard Thawne. Eobard Thawne was a brilliant scientist born in the 25th century and genetically altered to already be smarter than most with an IQ of 167, which automatically gives him a technological understanding that exceeds almost everyone from the modern era. But he was able to create his own negative speed force that has the ability to shut off other speedsters' connection to the regular speed force. His negative speed force also gave him the ability to digest information at an incredibly fast rate, and that, coupled with his already high intelligence, makes him extremely capable with his mind, even being able to figure out insane ways of manipulating time to his advantage. Now, he isn't the greatest fighter, but with his speed and his mind, he doesn't need to be. Number 7. Dr. Sivana. Sivana is a scientific genius, mastering almost all of the scientific disciplines that exist on Earth, making him one of the leading minds on Earth. He is one of the cookie cutters that people think of when talking about mad scientists. He is also the arch enemy of Shazam and the Captain Marvel family, and because of this and his genius, he has elevated himself beyond just being a scientific genius, studying the occult and being able to teach himself how to harness magic, specifically after he joined forces with Mr. Mind and when he reawakened Black Adam, which is when his right eye became capable of seeing magical energies. Number 6. Professor Ivo. Professor Ivo is a genius, specifically specializing in cybernetics. He has built Amazo, Amazoid, Composite Superman, and Kid Amazo, and he was also the partner of T.O. Morrow in building Red Volcano. He also built the body of Tomorrow Woman, but he was also able to figure out how to give himself immortality even if the formula that granted him this ability was flawed and left him pretty rough looking. Number 5. Batman Who Laughs. Look, I'm sorry that this guy makes almost every single DC villain related list, but it's not my fault. DC took a version of Batman, a level 9 intelligence with an IQ of 192 and an unbelievable amount of skill, and turned him into a villain, and that almost automatically puts the Batman Who Laughs in the top tier of threats. But then they also Jokerized him, and it made the character capable of almost destroying the entire multiverse with the powers of Dr. Manhattan. Just like Lex Luthor, Bruce Wayne is just a normal guy, so to elevate himself to the level of a multiversal god who defeats almost any threat posed against him, the intelligence, cunning, and skill he would have to possess this is just beyond anything else we have ever seen. Just like Batman, the Batman Who Laughs is a planner who lets almost nothing get in his way. I wouldn't be surprised if he finds a way to return to the DC universe very soon. Number 4. Darkseid. The most intelligent of the new gods with the exception of Metron, Uxas is the genius ruler of Apocalypse who has developed advanced technologies, conquered countless worlds, gained the anti-life equation, and developed the Soulfire formula for defeating the Source. He is one of the ultimate enemies of the universe, and while that is largely due to the amount of sheer power he has, it's backed up by an incredible level of otherworldly intelligence and an insane amount of experience. He's a master tactician that is able to pretty much outthink almost all of the universe's superheroes, and his presence is always a massive cause for concern that always requires a group effort to overcome. Number 3. Ozymandias. The Watchmen comics, which are integrated with DC but always feel slightly separate, have this knack for being rather realistic in terms of comic books, which is why their version of the smartest man on Earth is actually quite terrifying. Ozymandias is wildly intelligent, but because of Watchmen's realism, he doesn't often make the same stupid, ego-fueled mistakes that other villains, like Lex Luthor, do. Also, more often than not, the heroes kind of find themselves a little conflicted when facing him. That's because he is genuinely trying to help everyone except for the millions or billions of people who would perish for his goals to become reality. Ozymandias is also possibly responsible for pulling strings throughout the multiverse in order to enact his own wills. I feel like since he's more involved with the Watchmen, he kinda gets overlooked, but he is almost always given the title of smartest man on Earth, and it's not for no reason. Number 2, Lex Luthor. Luthor achieved his place as Earth's greatest criminal in the mainstream DC universe thanks to his super intellect, eidetic memory, and gift for strategy. He's also one of the only villains who has repeatedly rallied together the other supervillains, which someone on the internet described as trying to herd a group of cats, and Lex was able to do it. There isn't a facet of science Luthor hasn't mastered to extend his goals or enhance his business empire, including space, time, and extra-dimensional travel, biochemistry, robotics, and synthetics. Luthor isn't just considered the most intelligent human, but one of the most brilliant beings in the multiverse. I find Lex and Oz to be fairly equal, but obviously Lex has many more examples that show off his vast intelligence, and that just puts him a cut above at number 2. But at number 1, it's Brainiac. There is no being in the universe that can stand up to the intellectual power of Brainiac, and with that name, it would just be silly if anyone could. Using his biological supercomputer of a brain, Brainiac rules over planets that he has conquered and manipulates events from the shadows. He even has other separate versions of himself that could each take up a point on this list. His brain is so powerful that he often doesn't have to engage in actual combat at all. His obsession with learning and studying everything has led him across the cosmos, destroying anything that gets in his way, leading him to possess the combined knowledge of many thousands of worlds that he has assimilated and contained. He is, on paper, the smartest DC villain out there. Unfortunately for him, in practice, he's outsmarted by some relatively simple things, like, for example, the fact that germs exist. But despite that, there's absolutely no doubt that this 12th level intellectual being lives up to the name of Brainiac as one of the smartest villains in DC Comics.
Number 10, Ultron. When Hank Pym was experimenting with robotics, he developed Ultron, a highly intelligent and sentient robot. The robot brainwashed Pym into forgetting that he had created him and went on his merry way, brainwashing various scientists into helping him create new robot bodies for himself in his constant quest to improve himself. He also created the hero Vision, who he created in an attempt to kill the Avengers, but for some reason he imprinted Vision's neural network with the brain patterns of the hero Wonder Man, and then was surprised when Vision turned on him and joined the heroes. Ultron is clearly highly intelligent, but a lot of his plans involve brainwashing scientists into doing his bidding, so one could argue that a lot of his intelligence is just good delegation. Number 9, Kang the Conqueror. Nathaniel Richards is a man from the 30th century who may or may not be a descendant of Reed Richards' time-traveling father. Alternatively, he may also be a descendant of Doctor Doom. So either way, he's got them genius genes. He used his superior intellect to rebuild Doctor Doom's time machine and went back to ancient Egypt, where he set himself up as a pharaoh until he was dethroned by the Fantastic Four. He ended up in the 40th century, where he reinvented himself as Kang the Conqueror and came back to the 20th century with future technology that he hoped would allow him to take over the Earth and defeat his archenemies, the Avengers. He has extensive knowledge of the future and has a specialty in physics as well as being an expert engineer and technician. Number 8, Dr. Octopus. Otto Octavius graduated from MIT with a specialty in radiation, leading him to be recruited by the US Atomic Research Center. Due to the hazardous materials he would have to be handling, Otto developed 4 mechanical arms, but a workplace accident involving unstable chemicals left him insane but capable of controlling the arms with his mind. Otto became one of Spider-Man's most consistent foes, using his genius to create nefarious inventions to make the webhead's life more difficult. Perhaps his most impressive invention was the brain-swapping Octobot that allowed Dr. Octopus to trade bodies with Peter Parker, making himself the new superior Spider-Man for a time. Number 7, Mr. Sinister. Nathaniel Essex was a 19th century professor who became obsessed with the theory of evolution presented by Charles Darwin. He managed to predict the rise of mutants and began to perform brilliant but cruel experiments on people in order to try and prove his theory. This caught the attention of the mutant Apocalypse, who transformed him into Mr. Sinister, granting him mutant powers. Sinister used his extraordinary mind to continuously improve himself by taking and incorporating the DNA DNA of other mutants. He has mastered the art of cloning, and his work over the centuries has made him an expert in mutant DNA, something that has allowed him to become more powerful over the years. His genius has also helped him to manipulate the lives of Professor X, Gambit, Havoc, Cyclops, and Jean Grey. Number 6. MODOK. There is some variation of the origins of MODOK, but the common thread is that George Tarleton was a low-level employee of Advanced Idea Mechanics, who was chosen to be the subject of an experiment with the aim of creating a way to effectively study the cosmic cube. They altered George, hoping to improve his intelligence, but the resulting experiment also caused his head to grow to a massive size, forcing him to be seated in a hover chair called the Doomsday Chair, as he could no longer support his head's weight. He became known as MODOK, with a C, mental organism designed only for computing. His increased intelligence also led to an increase in his ego and ambition, and he soon overthrew his superiors and took over AIM, swapping out the C in his name for a K, becoming MODOK, mental organism designed only for killing. MODOK uses his advanced intelligence and his psychic powers to take on the various heroes of the Marvel Universe. This resulted in him neglecting the scientific aspects of AIM, trying to get revenge on the heroes he's fought, which led to him being ousted by AIM. So though he is intelligent, he is less capable of using his massive brain to be an effective leader than many of the other villains on this list. Number 5. Thanos. Thanos was born on the planet Titan and had the deviant gene, which gave him thick purple skin as well as superior strength and heightened powers. He fell in love with a woman who turned out to be Death, and dedicated his life to impressing her by destroying as many living things as possible. Using his big smart brain, he came up with a plan to acquire the Infinity Gems and wipe out half of all life in the universe in order to impress his love. Unlike many other evildoers who claim to be geniuses and then fail, Thanos actually pulled this off, getting all of the gems and using the Infinity Gauntlet to enact his deadly romantic gesture. Number 4. The Leader. Samuel Stearns was a man of below average intelligence who was working at a chemical plant when one of the canisters of waste he was moving broke open and doused him in toxic waste. On the plus side, rather than giving him cancer, it gave him super intelligence. On the flip side, it also caused his head to grow to a massive size and for his skin to turn green. Stearns decided to dedicate himself to taking over the world and started calling himself the Leader. Stearns has used his intelligence to create brilliant machines and nefarious plots that he has used to try and take out his archenemy, the Hulk. His intelligence has varied over the years, with the effects of the toxic waste wearing off and forcing Stearns to develop more schemes to maintain his superior intelligence. Number 3. The High Evolutionary. Herbert Wyndham was a geneticist who, inspired by Mr. Sinister's early work, developed a genetic accelerator which let him evolve creatures to their next evolutionary steps. In a move that doesn't really track, the scientific community cast him out, saying that he had no right to tamper with the natural process of evolution. He was given the secret of how to unlock genetic codes by a disguised Inhuman, and he continued his experiments, managing to evolve his pet Dalmatian, but it was mistaken for a beast and shot by locals. This caused Herbert to seek out a place where he could continue his work in private. He used his vast personal fortune to create a secret base in Wundagore Mountain. He created his human-animal hybrids, the New Men, and taught them a code of chivalry in order to aid his quest to further human evolution. He also evolved himself in order to grant himself more intelligence and renamed himself the High Evolutionary. He is so intelligent that he managed to create a device that stole the Silver Surfer's cosmic powers. In a shocking turn of events, he kidnapped Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver and revealed to them that they were not mutants, but were actually superpowered as a result of experiments he had secretly run on them when they were children. Number 2. Dr. Doom. Victor Von Doom was the child of Romani people living in Latveria. His mother was a sorceress, and after her and his father's passing, Victor began to study her books, teaching himself the dark arts. He also developed a keen scientific mind, which made him a legendary scientist and inventor at a very young age, and led to him being tracked down by the US military and offered further education in the States. It was here that he met Reed Richards, with whom he developed a lifelong rivalry. While in school, he developed his infamous Doom bots and also built a functional time machine. He was disfigured in an accident that resulted in his expulsion, and he went on to become the leader of some monks who helped him build his iconic armor. He became the main antagonist of the Fantastic Fantastic Four and the dictator of the country of Latveria, causing lots of problems for the heroes of the Marvel Universe. Number 1. The Maker. Reed Richards is often called the smartest man alive in the Marvel Universe, and alongside the Fantastic Four is one of Earth's greatest heroes. His ego has often led to him making some questionable decisions, but he has been instrumental in saving Earth from several threats including Galactus and the Skrull. Despite his heroics, we did witness a spectacular fall from grace for Reed in the Ultimate Comics universe, otherwise known as Earth 1610. The combined stress of the Fantastic Four breaking up and Sue Storm rejecting his marriage proposal caused Reed to snap and blow up his childhood home to fake his death, killing his family in the process. He went on to use aliens under his control to attack the heroes. He was eventually defeated and disfigured by the Human Torch and flung into the negative zone. Reed returned to Earth and took on the identity of the Maker and set out on a twisted quest to make the world perfect. He killed all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power and used an antimatter attack to attack Washington, D.C., killing POTUS, his cabinet, and all of Congress. The Maker went on to do a lot of twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth as well as the heroes of Earth 616, showing just how dangerous Reed Richards can be when his massive brain is turned against the heroes of the Marvel Universe.
Number 10. Joe Fixit. I think he looks just downright adorable in that suit, but his actions are definitely not adorable. Joe Fixit is essentially the Grey Hulk, which is a weaker, darker Hulk persona that resides inside Bruce's head. Joe is a trickster. He's manipulative, doesn't really care for others. He can drive a car. He has a twin pair of Tommy guns. Oh, and did I mention the suit? Because he wears a suit. Joe Fixit Hulk took up a job as an enforcer at a casino, which is where all of this mafioso business came from. And he stayed this way for several months, not reverting back into Bruce for the duration of this period. He even had a relationship at this time, like a whole relationship that blossomed and peaked and ended. Mr. Fixit came to an end eventually thanks to the Magia. Forget about it though. We're moving on to number 9. Number 9. War Hulk. This version of Hulk came about when the mutant Apocalypse promised the Hulk he would remove a piece of shrapnel that was in his brain if he became his War, one of the 4 horsemen of the Apocalypse. This meant that Hulk would be imbued with the power of the Celestials. That's a lot of power! As War, Hulk faced off against both the Absorbing Man and Juggernaut. But what he didn't know was that these two were accompanied by Rick and Janice Jones, Bruce's best and longtime friends. As Hulk was about to kill Juggernaut and the Absorbing Man, Rick jumped in the way, and Hulk got Rick instead, crippling him. The image of his friend, hurt by his own actions, caused Hulk to break of Apocalypse's influence and run away, ashamed of his actions. Number 8. Klaue. Klaue, which is Hulk backwards, very creative, is basically what happens when the Hulk goes Hulk. He is another one of the evil personalities inside Hulk's head. This version of Hulk has black skin with glowing red scars. He has red demonic eyes, white hair, and big talons. Klaue emerges when Hulk reaches a sufficient level of rage, meaning he is more powerful than any other rage-boosted version of the Green Hulk, which is insane if you know about a certain world-breaking version of the character. This version of Hulk is usually suppressed and has only shown up a few times, and not for very long, I might add. He appeared in the Axis storyline where heroes and villains had their moralities switched. Hulk isn't exactly always a good guy, sometimes letting his rage hurt good and bad guys. But since Klaue is his opposite, he lets his rage hurt and maim everyone, good and bad, putting even the villains on alert. Look, he just wants to bathe in the blood of the innocents. That's reasonable, right? Number 7. Zombie Hulk. Whoever came up with the Marvel Zombie story deserves a big old round of applause. I don't care how silly it is. You turned Hulk into a hunger monster. Bravo. When Hulk gets infected with the zombie virus, presumably by Reed Richards aboard the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, the already basically unstoppable hero becomes a flesh-consuming zombie. After a while, the Hulk and other zombified heroes consumed Silver Surfer, gaining the power Cosmic, and after modifying that power, soon defeated and consumed Galactus, making them the next Galactus, or Galacti, or whatever. Which kind of makes sense, you know what I mean? Because zombies eat people, and Galactus eats planets. It's kind of like the natural progression of things, right? Using their newfound powers, the zombies traveled through the cosmos, devouring planets as they went. I think my favorite moment, though, would have to be when Zombie Thanos calls Zombie Hulk out for eating twice as much as everyone else, because, I mean, he's the Hulk, man's gotta eat. But in return, Hulk calls Thanos Prune Chin. which is just hilarious. Number 6, Guilt Hulk. Yet another split personality or alter ego of Bruce. The Guilt Hulk is very similar to Devil Hulk, who represents his anger, only this version of Hulk represents all the guilt and regret that the Hulk feels for all the horrible things he has done while in his Hulk form, as well as the horrible things done to him as Banner, which ultimately means that this persona is quite a bit stronger than its counterpart. What do I mean by the horrible things done to Banner? Well, apart from being feared and shunned and usually living a very, very lonely life, from a much too young age, Bruce suffered constant abuse from his father, Brian Banner, and this abuse caused all kinds of mental problems for Bruce. The Guilt Hulk, as well as the Devil Hulk and a few other Evil Hulk alter egos, are directly related to this abuse, with Guilt Hulk even taking the form of Bruce's father before becoming this thing. This Hulk is incredibly powerful, and it took the combined efforts of many of Bruce's other alter egos to hold and keep the Guilt Hulk persona repressed deep in Bruce's mind. Number 5, Pappy Banner. If you've never read the Old Man Logan storyline, I'm gonna warn you now. It is graphic. In this storyline, almost all of the other heroes are dead, and the villains rule, holding various different kingdoms. But Hulk is still here, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Years and years of gamma exposure affected him, making him more and more villainous. This Hulk, referred to as Pappy Banner, has claimed a large part of America, which includes California, as his own. He also has a gang now, but these aren't just normal gang members, no. These guys are all the interbred children of the Hulk and his cousin, Jennifer Walters, otherwise known as She-Hulk. When members of this gang murder his new family for fun, Wolverine goes on a crazed rampage, killing almost all the members of the Hulk family, including She-Hulk. The Old Man Bruce and Old Man Logan end up facing off until Bruce transforms into the Hulk, who is massive compared to his normal 616 self. Like 3 stories tall massive. He also really let himself go. Just saying. The Jumbo Hillbilly Hulk swallowed Logan whole, prompting Logan to cut his way out of the Hulk. Number 4, Infernal Hulk. On Earth 11638, Bruce Banner was kind of sick of dealing with the raging and the rampaging of the Hulk. So, when Spider-Man introduced Bruce to Stephen Strange, he became his apprentice and learned how to separate himself from the Hulk entity by sending it to hell and making it a demon. It worked though, except for when the 616 Hulk, along with Deadpool and Spider-Man, came to this 11638 Earth. The Infernal Hulk managed to enter back into the realm of Earth, swapping places with 616 Earth's Hulk persona. Infernal Hulk went after Sorcerer Supreme Bruce Banner, who was saved by both Deadpool and Spider-Man. How did they defeat this demon Hulk though? Well, Dr. Bruce reversed the banishing spell that sent Hulk to hell, and just before Infernal Hulk could return to his body, Bruce had his neck snapped, killing him, obviously. But his spirit lived on in the astral plane, so it's all good. Hey big guys, sun's getting real low. Oh, wait, no, we still gotta do the top 3. Well hey, now that you're here, why not give us a like and a subscribe? If you're enjoying the video, that is. It would really help us out. We don't get strong with rage, we get strong with your support. Okay, I'm sorry y'all. Let's just get on with the video, okay? Number 3, Null, Breaker of Worlds. Ever thought that Hulk should get a hammer like Thor? No? Me neither. But it is awesome. When Kal Borsun the Serpent sent down 7 magical hammers that represented his 7 followers to Earth, the hammer Null found its way to our lovely green friend, transforming him into Null, the Breaker of Worlds. Hulk/Null went a-smashing, rampaging all over South America, bringing him into conflict with the Avengers, who he defeated, and eventually with a solo Thor. When fighting Thor, Null teamed up with Angrier, Breaker of Souls, which was Ben Grimm the Thing, who was defeated by Thor. But we all know who is the strongest Avenger, don't we? Null was easily too powerful for Thor, and instead of facing him one-on-one, the God of Thunder threw Hulk into orbit. He landed in Transylvania and started taking on Dracula and his minions. It was only after Inca, disguised as Betty Ross, showed up that Hulk threw the hammer aside and left, wanting to be alone. Number 2, Worldbreaker Hulk. Now, it's fair to say that Worldbreaker Hulk deserves the top spot on this list, but I mean, gosh, I just don't think he's that evil. I'm kind of on his side. I cannot lie, but he still gets the number 2 spot because the level of power of this version of Hulk is insane. Near the end of the Planet Hulk storyline, the shuttle he was sent to Sakaar in blows up, killing the Green Scar's wife and children. Hulk reaches a whole new level of anger, which is directed at those who sent him here, the Illuminati, and so
he headed to Earth with his Warsworn. He made a quick stop at the moon though to defeat Black Bolt via Inhumans. When he got to Earth, he headed to New York, giving the city a time limit to be evacuated. And when that time limit stopped, well, he defeated everyone who was left. Iron Man and the Hulkbuster armor, the Avengers plus their tower, the US Army, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Juggernaut, Doctor Strange using the power of Zom, who, if you don't know who Zom is, you should go watch the top 10 most powerful Doctor Strange villains videos. It's insane. And Ghost Rider, all while saving the innocent bystanders. He then threw the Illuminati members he captured into the ring against each other, sparing them as he only sought justice, not murder. He was eventually sorta defeated by the Sentry, who he fought until they both reverted back to their human forms, which is when Bruce Banner knocked out Bob Reynolds. So look, if you haven't read this story, please do it. Number 1, Maestro. Okay, imagine a version of the Hulk with twice his strength, who retains the intelligence of Bruce Banner, right? Now take that Hulk and make him a ruthless, tyrannical ruler, and you get Maestro. Maestro is a possible future version of the Hulk who kills literally all the other heroes and villains and names himself Emperor over the whole world. Our Hulk first comes into contact with him when Rick Jones's daughter takes him into the future to fight his evil future self. But this Maestro guy, he ain't playing around, okay? In the very first fight, Maestro won by simply snapping Hulk's neck. That's it. Done. Over. And then he waited for Hulk to heal, taunting him and villain monologuing at him the whole time about all the terrible things they go through as the Hulk. The only way our Hulk could win was to bring Maestro back in time to when they gained their abilities, the Gamma Bomb, which destroyed Maestro on the atomic scale. The sheer idea of Maestro haunted Bruce and the Hulk's thoughts for the rest of time, wanting never to become that level of evil.
Number 10, The Leader. The Leader terrified me when I was a kid. The design, 8-year-old me couldn't deal. So The Leader first appeared in Tales to Astonish number 62 back in 1964. He was first established as a villain for the Hulk. He was meant to be an evil parallel and counterpoint to the Hulk, also mutated by gamma radiation. He instead developed heightened intelligence, demonstrated in 60s finesse with his giant head. He turned green too. He was Samuel Stearns, just an ordinary man until he was covered in radioactive waste. One of the containers he was moving exploded. The reason he mutates as he does is because of his own subconscious and the desires that he had there. This was how gamma radiation used to work. It was a twist on something you wanted, like in Banner's case to be less meek. So Stern wanted to be as smart as his brother, which resulted in his heightened intelligence but also the personality that accompanied it, that need to prove oneself and be the smartest person in the room at all times. He would go on to create an army of humanoids to fight for him, would lead a spy ring, and much more over the years. It is said that his intellect is beyond human comprehension, and that his potential intelligence is nearly unlimited. He can master any subject and adapt to any environment no matter how foreign. So yeah, don't let the cheesy appearance fool you. I wouldn't want to go up against the Leader. Number 9, The High Evolutionary. He first appeared, a full appearance, in the Mighty Thor number 134 back in 1966, though he was mentioned the issue before. He owes his existence to Mr. Sinister, though he's really looking at the notes of Nathaniel Essex. The High Evolutionary was Herbert Edgar Wyndham, who became interested in the work of Nathaniel Essex. This was vis-a-vis evolution, and he started experimenting with genetic manipulation, but with everything, not just mutants. He was approached by an Inhuman who gave him the papers, the blueprints to crack the genetic code. This would allow him to develop a serum called Isotope A. This would also get into magic and more, which would lead to him becoming the Lord High Evolutionary and eventually just the High Evolutionary. He would become an antagonist for Thor at the start. He would create new men who would be evil and mutated, and he would become a source of new villains, and people wouldn't always know it was him. Over time, he would become more and more unstable and have his own arc, the Evolutionary War. He's always a potential threat behind the scenes with a singular focus on accelerating evolution, unchained by morals, unfettered by personal ties. There are rumors he could join the MCU, but we shall see. Number 8, Vandal Savage. We need an immortal on this list. Vandal Savage first debuted in Green Lantern number 10 back in 1943. In the year 50,000 BC, Savage was a caveman until he was bathed in radiation from a mysterious meteorite. This would alter him and make him immortal and vastly intelligent. Savage has played the long game, for centuries amassing power and prestige, yet also balancing his ego, which while it is there doesn't require him to be in the spotlight, which makes him a truly dangerous adversary. Over time he has evolved into a sophisticated man, leaving his caveman savagery behind, except on occasion. As DC has gone through its many shifts, Vandal Savage has been tied into the very nature of the multiverse itself, so he's definitely gone up in importance. He's not overused either, which is nice. Part of his intelligence comes from experience and observation, which provides you a different breed of intellect, closer to cunning, which at times can be far more deadly than any form of academic learning. Number 7. Bane. One of the things that some have lost over time when it comes to Bane is that when he first appeared, he was a dark mirror to Batman. Parents dead, raised in a prison, honing his mind, seeking an adversary. That adversary came to be Batman. By the time Bane came to Gotham, he knew everything about Bruce Wayne, released his entire rogues gallery to tire him out before coming to fight him in his own home. Bane first appeared in Batman Vengeance of Bane #1 back in 1993. He was created for the Nightfall storyline, now famous, which would see Batman's back broken. You know the famous panel? Crack right over the knee? Bane is a genius and classy too. Ignore the luchador mask, or don't, it's pretty great. He's got brawn and brains. He's a deadly combination. Admittedly, in King's Batman book, his intelligence has gotten kind of out of control. Like, haha, I planned everything, even down to how people would react emotionally and the mistakes they would make. It's a lot of a lot. City of Bane. Still, Bane himself is cool. He's gonna factor into Year of the Villain, and he's a great planner and very patient. He deduced Batman's identity in 1 year. He also speaks multiple languages, which is just a skill I admire. The Venom doesn't affect his mind, which is impressive. Batman turns into a fiend when he's on Venom. Yes, Batman would briefly be addicted to Venom. He used it to give him a boost. Number 6. Brainiac. He was first introduced in Action Comics number 242 back in 1958. He first appeared determined to shrink down cities, specifically Metropolis at first. Double at first. He ruled a planet. Eventually he would evolve to be an important part of Krypton's history, particularly with shrinking down the city of Kandor. He has changed a lot through the various versions, but one thing that never has is his intellect. That is a constant. It is said to be 12th level intellect. This allows him heightened calculation abilities, and he has mastered pretty much all sciences. Post-crisis he stated, and I quote, "His brain can process and sort the knowledge of over 419 octodecillion beings. He is also a technopath. He can possess people and absorb their knowledge, and in the modern eras he is often driven by a quest for knowledge to consume it. He is friends with Lex and considers him an equal in intellect, which is high praise. This is amongst organic beings, which Brainiac isn't really. He also spawns many generational characters, including one who would have a relationship with Supergirl. Number 5. Lex Luthor. He first debuted in Action Comics number 23 back in 1940, so he's been around since the Golden Age, but has changed a decent amount. Early Lex was much more of a mad scientist, you know, donning that green suit and the like. He also had hair, ginger hair. Then later it was said that Clark made it fall off and a science project gone wrong where they were partnered up. It was in the 80s that the businessman Lex would begin to become more prominent, and it would take a bit for the two elements to fuse into who Lex has become today. However, from the start, he is said to be the smartest man in the DC universe. A man who wastes his time stealing cakes. Yes, that's non-canonical, but it's still funny. He has total recall and has invented many machines and has some of the best plans going. His tragedy is he could really better the world if he wasn't so obsessed with Superman. DC, the Year of the Villain, ongoing at the time of this recording, is pretty much instigated by Lex, or Apex Lex as he is currently called. I cannot wait for that name to fade into obscurity. I can't say Apex Lex without chuckling. Lex fully knows Clark is Superman, don't at me. He's humoring him, just like everyone else on the planet. At the planet. Both. Number 4. Solomon Seltzer, the Professor. We're talking about Wanted by Mark Millar, one of his indie comics produced by Top Cow Productions. The Professor is said to have level 9 intelligence. I love that you can just assign a number to intelligence and people just go with it. Like, ooh, level 9. Level 9 of what? Tell me. He had dominion over a fifth of the Earth and was committing crimes to fund his research. He is actually responsible for provoking protagonist Wesley Gibbons into discovering his powers in the best way by just making him shoot the wings off of flies. This was adapted into a film. James McAvoy was in it. I just felt like putting someone from outside the big two on this list, and maybe we can inch more and more towards those indie lists. That's my master plan. Got the boys to have on this channel, I live in hope. Don't let your dreams be dreams. Number 3. Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin. He first debuted in the Amazing Spider-Man number 14, while the Green Goblin did. He is one of the most prominent Marvel villains going, but at the start he didn't have an identity to go with him. He's an iconic Spider-Man baddie who has grown to be a problem for the entire universe. So Osborn himself was already smart, a master industrialist, but when he was exposed to the chemical solution that would transform him into the Green Goblin, he would also increase his intellect. When in a more sane frame of mind, Osborn is chilling, approaching plans from a business-like perspective. He created the Dark Avengers after all. The thing is, Osborn is often insane, but he can still do some master planning, they're just more unhinged. The death of Gwen, the first time, not the retcon where he was sleeping with her beforehand. Put that in a box, then burn the box, then scatter the ashes over someplace you hate. Osborn is seen moving behind the scenes, brokering deals, creating teams, menacing Spider-Man, and sometimes falling off the deep end. But then he'll do things like accidentally erase himself from existence in the What If where he had the Infinity Gauntlet. Is he too high? Maybe, but he gains some iconic points. Also for the fact that his cunning has been shown to be increasing steadily. Number 2. Dr. Doom. Good old Doom, introduced introduced in the Fantastic Four #5 back in 1962. He's one of the primary antagonists for the Fantastic Four, but like Norman, he has moved far beyond that. Dr. Doom has set about mastering all he can. He is both a scientist and a sorcerer. None of that "I don't believe in magic" nonsense, especially not in the Marvel universe where it clearly exists. He's up there with Stephen Strange in terms of sorcery. He's also a mild technopath. He has proven himself to be able to do certain things other characters, Reed, can't. He can replicate the powers of others, has conquered the world, was a god emperor, but he is extremely arrogant, and this is often his undoing. He needs you to know he's Doom, and respect him accordingly. It can prove to be a fatal flaw. His intellect can also lead to him being bored. He needs a challenge. Side note, he's actually a good ruler and his people actually like him. So he's got that going for him. He's a benign despot. #1. The Maker. Did you guess he would make, pun fully intended, my #1 spot? This is an evil version of Reed Richards, initially from the Ultimate Verse, where like most characters he was already a jerk. So he first appeared as the Maker in Ultimate Fallout #4 in 2011. He was trapped in the negative zone and his intellect vastly increased there to the point where he became deformed, his head stretching. Unlike Reed, the Maker has no ties, nothing to keep him from exercising his intellect in that cold, clinical, curious way that quite often leaves people by the wayside. Reed is constantly fighting against this, or he was until he became Nice Guy Reed. The Maker was a dark mirror of him, and while in Evil Reed, we've seen that happen in alternate realities, not just this one. Or also What Ifs. So smart, so evil.
#10. Jonathan Walker. US Agent might be a hero now in the comics, but when he started out in the 616 continuity, he was manipulated into becoming a villain. Jonathan Walker was initially known as antagonistic hero Super Patriot, who did his best to discredit Captain America, claiming that he himself stood for the United States' true ideals. As a result of Red Skull's meddling and manipulation, he was appointed to replace Steve Rogers as the new Captain America after Rogers stepped down as the government actually owned the title and refused to let him keep the title if he wasn't going to be working for them. As Captain America, Walker took a very extreme and violent approach that put him into direct conflict with Rogers, who was currently going by the mantle of the Captain. In the end, the Captain defeated Walker, and after Skull's involvement in the ordeal was revealed, the two ended up teaming up to take him down, starting off on Walker's path to redemption as hero US Agent. #9. Cap Wolf. Werewolf Captain America isn't as much an alternate version of Cap as it is a distinct moment in Cap's history where he happened to be transformed into a werewolf. Captain America ends up becoming a werewolf while on the trail of Colonel John Jameson, who had gone missing. Captain America himself had reason to suspect that something awful had happened to Jameson, who it seemed may be plagued by his wolf side once more. Jameson was known in the past for operating as Man-Wolf. It seemed as though a wolf-like creature or werewolf was responsible for a series of murders. In the end, however, Cap's trail ended up leading him into a much more complex and disturbing plot where a villain was attempting to use a recreated Werewolf by Night wolf serum to turn people into werewolves. Captain America became one of their victims and for a time became a werewolf himself. Granted, he was still a hero at this point, but werewolves in general are considered to be somewhat uncontrollable monsters who are at least occasionally ruled by their own bloodlust. So I think we can at least partially count Cap Wolf. Also, I needed to complete the monster trifecta. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Captain America lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. #8. MCU US Agents. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, US Agent John Walker accidentally becomes an evil version of Captain America without really intending to do that. Really, it's more complicated than him just being straight up evil, as it is with most Marvel Cinematic Universe antagonists. Walker really wants to do right by the Captain America mantle and do it justice. He's a soldier who has worked super hard to earn this title, but also, although his heart might be in the right place, that doesn't mean that he knows the best way to approach replacing Cap or doing right by his legacy. Walker ends up becoming misguided as a result of dealing with so much disrespect from those around him, and as a result of him not being, as powerful as Cap would be because he doesn't have the super soldier serum. He realizes that being chosen and respected as the new Captain America by the government doesn't necessarily mean that the people of the United States will also respect you, nor that Steve's actual allies and friends will respect you as his replacement either. After he loses his own best friend, Lamar Hoskins, he becomes completely fed up with trying to figure out how to do what's right and instead decides to do what he feels needs to be done. This makes him much more violent and much much more dangerous, turning him into an enemy of Falcon and Winter Soldier, and leading the government to later on remove his title, his honors, and basically just overall dismiss him. Fortunately, the US agent still found a place on what will likely be either the MCU Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers team. TBD, or at least to be declared, if not to be determined. Number 7. Mutant Captain America. This version of Captain America was a mutant who ended up replacing the original Captain America after he died in a Sentinel attack. He wasn't just given the mantle of Cap either, but also ended up receiving the Super Soldier Serum. He had this and his own mutant powers besides, which made him pretty crazy powerful. Although the mutant version of Cap had good intentions, his powers were somewhat uncontrollable, which was a big problem. His powers going haywire was what ended up causing the death of his own group, the Six, and the Avengers, who he was at the time fighting against. This caused him to lose his sanity, turning him into a full-on villain and a loose cannon who attacked and defeated pretty much everyone who came after him, except Havoc, who managed to successfully kill and defeat the crazed mutant version of Captain America. Poor mutant Captain America, it sounds like it was a rough go, you know? Number 6. Zombie Colonel America. What's worse than a werewolf Cap? A zombie Cap, obviously. This is the version of Captain America that we get in the Marvel Zombieverse. Although really, this isn't Captain America as a zombie, it's Colonel America, because that is Steve Rogers' hero mantle in this reality. Here, Colonel America was infected and turned into a zombie during that first confrontation with the zombified Sentry, which the Avengers responded to in downtown New York. Zombie Cap was responsible for turning Spider-Man into a zombie, biting him after he himself was infected. He was one of the zombies to fight against the villains for who should get the remains of Galactus' corpse, and of course with it the power Cosmic, which would enable them to travel to other worlds, which they then could devour. However, Zombie Cap was defeated by his nemesis, a zombified Red Skull. So, no power Cosmic for him. He dead. He's double dead. Really. Number 5. Evil Clone. An evil clone with the mind of Red Skull. To be honest, this has happened multiple times in the comics, where Red Skull has ended up having his consciousness, his personality, or his memories, or some combination of those, into the clone of Steve Rogers. It's happened both in the main continuity and in alternate universes. For this version though, we're going to be talking about issue 350 of Captain America, where the Red Skull in Steven Rogers' clone body ends up being the mastermind behind the whole commission/Walker kerfuffle that we talked about earlier on this list. His plan this time around in a Steve Rogers' clone body is to discard his previous ideologies and use capitalism itself to dismantle the democracy of America and destroy the nation from the inside out. It doesn't work out in the end, and the issue ends with him facing off against both John Walker and the Captain and becoming deformed once more by the red dust of death. But he did try it. He did try. And don't worry, he would come back in more clone bodies. That's how he do. Number 4. William Burnside. William Burnside was the Captain America of the 1950s, who ended up being retconned to not actually be Steve Rogers at all, although he was a man who believed he was Steve Rogers. This version of Captain America was later revealed to be William Burnside initially, a man who was hired to replace Captain America after he went missing in World War II. This version of Captain America was racist and extremely anti-communist, echoing the McCarthy communist witch hunts of those times. Burnside legally changed his name to Steven Rogers and would have an extended lifespan thanks to a version of the Super Soldier Serum that he was exposed to. However, because this was not a perfected version of the serum, it apparently would also cause him to become more extreme over time as his psyche and mind degraded as a result, so made him pretty crazy and pretty evil. Number 3. Vampire King. This version of Captain America comes from the Exile series, where he becomes King of the Vampires. In the alternate reality of Earth 3931 during World War II by Baron Blood. Baron Blood turns him into a vampire. Vampire Cap is definitely not a good dude, likely the most evil of all the monstrous Captain Americas listed here. This version of Captain America has his own sinister version of the Avengers and Thralls, who he enlists and forces to fight for him. However, he still proves to be no match for the Exiles, who end up defeating and decapitating him in the end. Number 2. President Red Skull. Not an alternate version of Steve Rogers, but an alternate version of Red Skull who beat Rogers and took to wearing his Captain America suit off and around his new redecorated Oval Office. This alternate version of Red Skull comes from the Old Man Logan universe, where Red Skull ends up appointing himself the new president of the US, which he renames America. America with a K. Red Skull ends up not just defeating Captain America, but also almost all of the superhero community when he manages to rally together an impossible to defeat force of supervillains who coordinate their attack on the nation. Being that he's Red Skull, he's probably one of the most evil versions of Captain America out there because he's Red Skull, although like I said, he's not fully a Cap alt really, but he definitely evil, so. And he does wear that suit a lot. Number 1. Hydra Supreme. This alternate version of Captain America was initially retconned to be the version of Captain America. Steven Rogers ended up being revealed as a Hydra sleeper agent in one of the biggest twists in comic book history. All his heroic actions had apparently just been Steve buying time and building trust so that he'd be in the perfect position to take over the US and could then reveal his true colors. Hail Hydra to this day is one of the most iconic lines ever uttered by the supposed hero. However, it all turned out that this version of Cap wasn't the real Steve Rogers of 616. Instead, what happened was Kobik, the sentient living version of the Cosmic Cube, was convinced by Red Skull that reality should be warped so that Cap could become an agent of Hydra. When this happened, the real heroic version of Captain America ended up trapped within a shard of the Cosmic Cube, and the now altered version of the character took his place in the reality of 616. In the end, the true Cap would be freed from the shard and would end up fighting and defeating his evil Hydra Supreme alternate version. And if you're worried, don't worry, the shard was made bigger, so it wasn't like little tiny Cap running around.
In the number 10 spot, we kick off with the Joker. One of Batman's main rivals, the Joker is one of the most influential and well-studied villains in comic book history, and spot, we have Emperor Palpatine. We didn't think Star Wars could get a villain any better than Vader, but then Darth Sidious came along. Sometimes when you're overtly evil, you don't get very far, nobody wants to follow you, but Palpatine thought about this right off the bat. Instead, he used his position of Senator of Naboo to manipulate and construct the Galactic Empire that was intended known as the Jew Hunter from Inglourious Basterds, Lando is incredibly full of himself, but also incredibly ambitious, and he has the brains to keep up with his determination. He is a sociopath that knows how to get what he wants, whether it's through his sadistic tendencies or through his manipulative charms. The one piece of redemption for him is potentially his love of milk, which has been analyzed previously as a sort of metaphor of leftover innocence from childhood. Or he just needs a lot of calcium to be an asshole. Coming in at number 2 is Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal is maybe one of the creepiest villains on this list, but that doesn't take away from his supreme genius. The villain was originally a psychiatrist, so he has a particular insight into the human mind and how it works, and he uses this to his advantage to achieve his goals. What's his goal? To keep his belly stuffed with human entrails. But on the other hand, we have his prison guards in Silence of the Lambs. I'm sorry, I didn't realize giving Hannibal his food tray meant you had to go inside his cell. Seems like a pretty bad idea. And finally, in the number 1 spot, we have HAL 9000. This is one that may seem like cheating because HAL is artificial intelligence and not flesh and bone, but the heuristically programmed algorithmic computer, that is a mouthful, is easily one of the smartest villains of all time. You really cannot outsmart a supercomputer, even if you were all 9 of the other villains combined. His downfall in the Space Odyssey series has nothing to do with any calculation flaw he made, but rather the fact that he lacked arms, and legs, and an entire body.